Jesus, we have the victory. You say we have the victory. Again, we have one more time. We have, 'cause He lives. I can face tomorrow.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Transformation Tidbits. We are so glad that you decided to join us this morning at 6 a.m., where we're transforming your mind. We're empowering you to overcome obstacles, and we're igniting the passion, the power, and the potential that lies on the inside of each and every one of us on today. I am so glad to see Election Day 2024. It is a blessing to be able to be alive and have the right and the privilege to be able to vote on today. On today, we're going to go and we're going to be talking about being elected by God is a great calling. I want us to realize such a privilege and such an honor that we have to being elected by God. First of all, even before we go into what the day represents. When we look at being elected by God as a great calling, what we're really saying is that we're chosen by God. And when we look at being chosen by God, it means that He has entrusted us with a unique mission that is tailored just for you. It is tailored just for I. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be filled with ease and comfort. So I need us to understand, although we have been chosen, although we have been called out, although in school we used to say we've been picked on, but although we have been doing all of that, it does not signify that our life is going to be filled with comfort. It's going to be filled with ease, but instead it points to purpose. It points to mission. It points to that you've been entrusted to do a mission that's designed just for you. So on today, on this line, I want everyone on this line to know that you've been called, you've been picked on, you've been elected by God to do something transformative. You've been elected by God to go out and declare who He is. You've got a right on today to do what God has called you to do. And I want us to understand on today, because we have that right, when God elected us, He invited us to step beyond the ordinary. So you're not just an ordinary person, but you're extraordinary. I know last week we talked about Dana Bile's song, singing Just an Ordinary Person. God chooses ordinary people, but He chooses the character of us. We don't have to be something super exciting. Our occupation or our person doesn't have to be someone that's so elite. He wants someone with a true heart, someone that's going to do what He calls them to do, someone that's apt to make changes, to transform lives of people. And that's the person you are. That's the person that I'm on today. And I need us to understand on this day of election that you have been called on today. You've been called to go out and share the gospel with all of those that you've come in contact with. When God elected us, as I said, He invited us to step beyond the ordinary. So our lives, our actions, our words, they all have power to bless someone. I don't know on today what journey you're going to be taking. I don't know what polling station you're going to do, but I want you to understand on today that you have been elected on today. Irregardless of who wins this election, know that you already are a winner. Know that God has already called you. He has already elected you. He has already ordained you for the purpose that He has designed for your life. And your journey is a testimony of hope. Your journey is a testimony of faith. Your journey is a testimony of divine love for all of those that you have come in contact with on today. So you have already won. So I want to say to each and every one of you, under the sound of my voice, if you will allow me to say, you are a winner on today. You have already won your election, and your election is that you're connected with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. God has already chosen you. You can celebrate now because you're part of the family of God. You can celebrate now because you have won your contest by coming connected with God. It's not going to be perfect because we're not going to be perfect. But when God called us and He elected us, He aligned us to His word. His word is an alignment for our life. So we have to align ourselves up according to the word of God. That is our precept. That is our Bible. That is what we have to look at in order to engage with those that we come in contact with. When God elected us, He invited us to transform not only our lives, but to transform all of the lives that we come in contact with. On today, we've been elected by God, and it's a journey. It's not a destination. The real election has a destination because they served 4 years. But I'm so glad that when I was elected by God, I decided to walk this journey with God. So there's no the expiration point on my election with God. My election with God stays connected with God, stays ongoing with God until He comes back again to receive me. It's a call to action, your election. You are walking in a unique way. You are walking in a way that serves God, that displays His characteristic, that displays His love, His gentleness, His compassion to all of those that comes in the way. You've been called. It's a role that you're called into, and the role is called a Christian on today. So you've got to tell your story. You've got to tell your purpose. You've got to fulfill the desire that God has for your life. So since you've been elected on today, since you've already been brought into the family of God on today, when we go out to the various polling station, and for some of us, we have already cast our vote by mail. Whatever it is you did on today, it's all about casting a ballot on today. And I want you to understand on today, when you go out to cast your ballot, when we look at that mark that we make on paper, or when we touch that electronic form that we're going to do today, you've got a choice that you have to make. Just like God chose us, there is a choice that you have to make in casting your ballot on today. And in a lot of cases, casting your ballot, you're looking for the one that's compassionate. You're looking for the one that's going to render freedom. You're looking at the one that's going to render justice. We already know that the King of Kings gives us all of that, but we've got a duty on today. And our duty on this day of election is to cast our ballot. So we're choosing to vote. But when we vote today, because we belong to God, we're voting from a spiritual perspective. And when we're looking at that, we're voting from a spiritual perspective. We're bringing about a powerful experience in line with our values. And what are our values? Our personal values, our intentions. We have a responsibility on today as being chosen and elected by God to go out and to do our duty on today. So when we look at casting our ballot on today, there's some steps that I want to introduce to you, some steps that I want to give you today as we go to our polling place, as we go to the place that we're going to cast our vote. On today, when we look at some spiritual steps that we're going to take when we go to cast our vote, our first spiritual step is we're going to reflect on the value. What do I mean? We're going to take a moment before we sign that ballot, before we touch that electronic form, and we're going to take a moment and just reflect on the values of the candidates' names that are listed on those ballots. We're going to allow the very character of those people to resonate deeply on the inside of us. We're going to consider, are they loving? Are they compassionate? Are they just? Do they have integrity? Do they line up with the core values that we have? And then we're going to take that step and we're going to look at ourselves as we look at the character of that person. Do we have similarities in that person's name that's on that ballot? We're going to reflect for a moment before we cast our ballot. The next thing is we're going to set an intention. We're going to be intentional about the point that we're going to these polling areas and we're going to vote. We're going to approach voting as an act of service. We've got an act of service that we're supposed to do. So we're going to set our intentions when we go to vote because we're contributing to things that's going to have an outcome on our community. We're contributing to the things that's going to have an outcome in our world. So we're visualizing how we're taking choices on today, how we're making choices on today. We want to bring the person in office that's going to get a positive change. They're going to have a transformation, how they're going to affect the people. So first of all, we're going to reflect. Then we're going to set our intentions. What are our intentions as we travel to this site on today? What are the things that we're going to do? How are we going to approach the person that we're going to, or the people that we're going to be voting for? And then we're going to practice gratitude. We're going to thank God, first of all, for the privilege that we have to vote. Because I don't know if you know it or not, everyone does not have this privilege. But we're going to acknowledge the ability that we're contributing to the future. We're contributing to our community. We're contributing to the process that's going to happen. We've been given a large responsibility on today. And how are we going to take this responsibility that we have? So, God, we thank you for the responsibility. We thank you for the right to be able to vote. Now help us vote in the right way. And then quickly, we're going to say a prayer. We're going to appreciate the people's name that are on the ballot, but we're going to pray that God put us in the right mindset. Help us to hit the right button on that electronic function that we have to do. Help us if we had to do ballots to color in the right circle that's coordinated to the right person that we're going to do. God, we thank you that we're taking this time out and we're acknowledging you, but we've got a right on today. Help us to be responsible in the responsibility that we have on today. Our next point is that we're going to vote with integrity on today. We're going to stay aligned with our core beliefs. And we're going to stay aligned when we're making choices. Now, our core beliefs may not measure up to everything that the person who's running in office is going to say, but we're going to come as close as possible to the person that has the core belief. We're going to trust that our vote is going to be made with integrity, with clarity. It's going to have a meaningful impact when we vote on today. Remember, we are the people of God, and God said that we are called to make a change in this world. So the change that we're going to come, we're going to take advantage of it, and we're going to vote with integrity. And then we're going to pray once again over the ballot. We're going to pray once again with offering up gratitude for the opportunity to be able to vote. But then we're going to pray for the names that are on the ballot. We're going to pray because they gave up time from their family. We're going to pray because they're going into public service now. So more time that they're taking away from their family. We're going to pray that they need strength because they have been on the campaign road for X amount of days now. And probably they're weary on the inside of as well as being anxious. But we're going to pray that God would sustain their strength, that God would give them what they need, that God would allow the right words to proceed out of their mouth. And the candidate that's going to win, we're going to pray for them too. Because the Bible talks about the Lord has the heart of those that are in charge in his hands. And he can move it, he can guide it, he can do what it needs to do. But it takes our responsibility by being connectors of Jesus Christ to begin to pray. Pray for the office, pray for the people, pray for the family. We may not totally agree with the things that will transpire, but one thing we do know for sure, that there will be a transition. One thing that we do know for sure, that our life will be transformed after today. So it calls us, God's people, to come together and to lift up the community, to lift up the world, to pray over the people, that God will guide them in the right way. That when they're in the rooms and they're strategizing at the table for laws that are going to concern us, that God will give them the know-how, that even if they go astray, that God will bring them back in the realm that he designs for them to be. After all, he has a purpose and he has a plan for this world. So we want to execute and to make sure that God's purpose in his plan comes into fruition. So it takes us as the people of God to pray over the ballot. It takes us as the people of God to pray for this world, to pray for the people, the candidates that are on there, to make sure that they do whatever it is that they have been elected to do. And then after that, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to release and we're going to trust. We're releasing that ballot. We're releasing that level on that electronic force, and we are casting our vote. Our vote. We're releasing it on today, and we're releasing the outcome of whatever it is or whomever it is that we voted. We're trusting that we've done the right thing according to the wisdom that God has poured on the inside of us. When we talk about releasing, we can take that to a spiritual aspect, that we're letting go what we don't have control over. We're letting go things that we ought not to hold in. We're letting go and giving God the right away to do what it is. And when we let go of our control and we remain open to whatever happens, then we will know how to pray for what's coming on. And then our last thing is that we're going to exit. But when we exit after we release and trust and gave it to God, we're going to exit the place in a prayer. We're going to exit the place in joy. We're going to exit the place knowing that we did what we were supposed to do. We're going to exit the place telling God that God, we have released this into your hand. As you being the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, you're going to do what needs to be done. But most of all, God, you understand and you know, and you've already made a way. You made a way for your people. You made a way for the world to come into fruition as you have designed it to be. I want us to realize that we have a responsibility on today. We got a responsibility because we've been elected by God. We've got a responsibility to do what it is that we need to do. So as we travel to our various polling places this morning, I want us to think about the steps that I've talked about. We got to be intentional. After we reflect on the value of voting on today, then we got to be intentional about our votes. We got to practice gratitude when we go in here. We got to be thankful for the opportunity to be able to vote. We've got to change our mind and not allow our mindset to be so drudged or so grudging about the task that we're about to do. We got to vote with integrity on today because we've been elected by God. We got to pray over the ballot, God. You touch these people. You move in the midst of the people. And then after we pray over the ballot, we got to release and we got to trust that it's all in the master's hand. And after we do that, when we exit the place, we're going to pray for the remainder of the people that's coming in to vote, that God may touch their hands, that he may touch their minds, that what way that they would vote because you have been in that place, that God would allow their vote to be changed according to his will and his way. On today, my Tuesday transformation tidbit for you on today is remember God has chosen us that we might go and bear fruit, and that our fruit will remain. When we're talking about fruit in that passage, fruit is the metaphor for success and productive life. We got to be productive today. We've got to use this as a model to choose the right candidate on this day of election. After all, on this day of election, we've been elected. We've been called by God to do something great. We've been given the opportunity to cast our ballot on today. You've been elected on today, called by God for a great calling on today. I want you to know that you are a winner on today. You have already won the contest by being connected to the King of Kings, by yielding to the call of the great I am on today. On this day of election, I want you to know that you've been elected. You've been called by God. Be amazing on today, people of God. Shalom.